Folks, welcome to FiddleHed Fiddle Lessons. If you want to get better at the fiddle or anything, you have to work carefully at the edge of your abilities. Strike a balance between easy and hard. If you always play easy things, you get complacent, you kind of stop learning, and your sound will eventually not be as good. Plus you'll get kind of bored maybe. And if you're always playing things that are way too hard, you'll get discouraged, have less fun, perhaps even give up. So I suggest you practice alternating between easy and hard. The easy thing will center you, help you find your tuning and tone, and give you confidence. The hard thing will throw you off, make you feel uncertain, but it will expand your abilities and skills and also your potential. I'm going to suggest 3 practices for working at your edge. Number 1, alternating between a scale and a tune. Number 2, alternating between an easier and harder way to play a small piece. Number 3, separating the left and right hands. Let's start with the first practice, alternating between a scale and its tune. So basically, a scale is something that after you've played it many times, you start to get better at it, right? And you'll be able to use that scale as a reference. Say we're in D major. Alright, so it's a good way for you to kind of find your tuning because you're starting to know it. You're starting to know what it should sound like. You can compare it, with the mental map you have in your mind. Whereas a new tune, you're more likely to play out of tune because you're not even sure what you're doing yet. So that's why it's really great to return to the scale. It's like, okay, I'm just going to focus on my sound and my tuning. And you just go back and forth. So if you're playing, I don't know, playing Fire on the Mountain, that's in A major, so if you hit a difficult spot you can't really do, then just go back to your A major scale. And after doing that a little bit, go back to Fire on the Mountain. So that's just an example of how when you get to your edge in something that makes you struggle, don't necessarily give up, but don't necessarily keep pounding away at it. Maybe just take a step back for a second. Do your scales, connect with your sound. Maybe you gotta connect with your breath a little bit too. You haven't been breathing. Happens to me still, even though I've been playing a long time. All right, so that's the first practice: scales and tunes. And maybe you don't like scales. I suggest that you can really enjoy scales, and I have a whole module of lessons on how to make scales fun, and that's on FiddleHed.com. So the second practice for working at your edge is alternating between something easy and something hard in a loop. So let's say you're playing a piece of a tune that's really hard for you. Basically, maybe there's an easier way to do it, and then you could kind of do the easy way and do the harder way, and that way you can get better at the harder way. Alright, let me give you an example. Say Danny Boy. I often use this part as a way to teach fourth finger or pinky on the A string. But that's very hard. If you're new to the pinky, it's very hard. Take these 4 notes. So you could just kind of keep pounding away at it. Maybe you're struggling, but there's another way, which is, well, instead of using the 4th, I know I can use the open E. So I do that once, and then I do it the hard way. Back to the easy way, then the hard way. And you may notice if you do this, you start to figure things out. It's like your poor little pinky, it gets a little break every other time, and to recover and kind of process what happened. But if you're always just working it, maybe that's just too hard in that moment. Anyway, once you kind of are starting to get the hang of it, yeah, I think I'm starting to get this. You can still alternate, but now let's do it in a loop. The easy way, hard way. Easy way, hard way. So just remember, looping is a way to go from thinking about what you should be doing to just kind of letting go and playing music. At a certain point, it's going to start to flow if you practice looping, especially with those little bits. All right, the third main practice for working at your edge is to somehow separate your left and right hands. So basically what you can do is you can look at, let's say you have a difficult passage, like something, this piece from Peacock Rag. So it's, if you're new to fiddle, that's kind of a tricky rhythm, but it's also a tricky left hand fingering. So doing both at once is like 4 times as hard if you square it. I don't know if I should square it or multiply it by 2. Anyway, that's totally unimportant to the discussion. So what I'm suggesting is that you either separate out the rhythm, like the right hand, or what the left hand is doing. So we start with the rhythm. Da 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 da. Actually, just singing like that's not a bad idea at all. It might help you. Just sing that rhythm if you can, or clap it. But what I was going to suggest is that you do it on an open string. And then do it a few times. So then you're kind of just getting the flow of that rhythm. Maybe do it in a more of a loop, like. Okay, now we're getting better at this piece, just the rhythm part of it. Let's switch to the other element, the left hand, which was. So let's remove the rhythm from that, just extract the melody from that, or the melody, the notes, which would be. If we just play them all equally instead of with that rhythm, that's what it would sound like. And then you can really get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with that fingering. Oh, I'm sliding between D2 and low 2. And going up to A1. You even do it really slowly or with a rhythm. Alright, so all this is like leading back to that little bit that's hard, which is ultimately leading back to playing the tune. So now I'm just going to try to put those things together. Oh, there's one more thing you can do with the left hand that's kind of cool. So we separated out the notes. But actually, if you really look at it, there's only 3 different pitches or notes we're playing. D low 2, 2, and A1. So sometimes I like to do mini scales. You take a hard piece, you take out all the notes that are involved in that piece, and play a mini scale to practice those notes. This is a great practice. I actually want to do a whole lesson on mini scales, so stay tuned for that. But anyhow, so that kind of concludes that whole way of working at your edge. I'm going to throw in another thing which wasn't on the list, but I just thought of, and that's say you're playing something that's really difficult and you want to make it just a little bit easier to practice. You can use 2 bows. Anytime, it doesn't always work, but if you can, say you're doing Blackberry Blossom or something with very notey. And it's kind of hard fingering thing. It can kind of magically be easier to just do things with 2 notes. I think it's because it simplifies the right hand, the work for the right hand a little bit. I'm not actually totally sure, but I think and you also get more time on each note. Maybe that's part of why it's easier, but it seems to usually be easier for people. So that's just a way to take something that's very challenging and difficult and make it a little easier for you. You know, just again, we're trying to play right at our edge. You know, if it goes too far, too hard, we're trying to make it a little easier just to kind of ride, and always testing our abilities. All right, so anyway, I just want to conclude by saying that ultimately, working at your edge, the best reason to do it is that I believe that it's the most fun way to practice. It's really going to be more interesting for you to be at this zone rather than too easy, too hard. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. Go fiddle with it. Go to FiddleHed.com for a progressive, step-by-step course outline, color-coded tabs, play-along tracks, sheet music, and much more. Thanks for watching the video. Excellent! And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.